Peace and love. A few months ago now, maybe, I challenged folks to share what they know. Like we're in a time of rapid change. And whoever has specialized knowledge, I'm encouraging people to share wherever they are, right? To come out of this thing that sometimes we do, where we look at the world and we want to critique what other people should do, how other people should move, how they should respond and react. And we miss opportunities to share in ways that no one else could, as far as what our expertise is. So I know that there are many things I'm learning very quickly, and it, I think they will help a lot of people. But what I've chosen to talk on today, this comes in the spirit. It comes from the spirit. Like, what could I share on? What is kind of irking my nerves about what I see in society, and have had the opportunity to shift some folks and provide some support. Okay, because each one must teach one. Sharing is caring and all that good stuff. So I want to share my experience and understanding about what happens in mental health services, and with the idea of helping people. Who do I want to help with this? I want to help our public servants who are first responders, our police officers, our social workers, our emergency room physicians. I want to help also people who interact with these healthcare professionals or professionals that I just mentioned. So, part of my background is trauma-informed care, and it is compliance. And I had the opportunity of helping and contributing to the planning and presentation as it relates to, they were about, I think they were 10 states who were recipients of a transformation grant, where, I mean, it's documented for years. I think President Bush sponsored one of the OPM, Office of Personnel Management studies on mental health services at the U.S. that is on the U.S. of A, that is dependent on Amarak. All right. So it's my responsibility as someone whose estate is here and whose inheritance is here, who has professional training from the best of the best. Sometimes I think the federal government services here, there's not enough attention to what happens right. There are very elite group of people who are well educated, who love people, who are employed through the federal government, and they have a standard that is high. And they've shared toolkits and shared information, research, and I don't want it to get lost, because we also live in a capitalistic society where people will come and take what was given for free, package it up, put a high price tag on it, and try to sell it or either try to bury it. And that is to the detriment of people. All right. And here we are. Well, today is on the Gregorian calendar, 31 August 2024. And there's a big misunderstanding about mental health. There's a big misunderstanding about mental illness. And I'm kind of starting in the middle, all right? But we can go back and, I give a foundation of what mental health is and how to respond to people in emergency situations. All right, that's what this is about this time, is responding to people in emergency situations. Okay, so crisis intervention is important. Um, what I want to say first is mental health and mental illness, it occurs on a continuum. So on one side of the continuum is illness, and on the other side is mental health. And then in between, we all are somewhere there in between. So if you're healthy, you're high functioning, you respond to stress well, you recover from disappointment or trauma quickly, you're on the high functioning end. And if you're on the other end, you're not aware of your environment, you hurt yourself, not be in the, not, how can I say, you're not in the moment, you could be despondent, anything. And there's so many things that impact mental health, right? And so I'm going to come to you from the standpoint of a practitioner in the formal mental health insurance covered arena, okay? Because I know, and I'm coming to you in my private capacity. I'm not coming to you as a mental health professional. The things that I will be able to share with you, being subjected to a license is a little bit different than what I will share with you as a private woman on my own right, with my constitutionally protected, God-given right, okay, protected by treaty, protected by international agreements, all right? And I do not abandon any of those rights at this time, nor do I abandon them nunc pro tunc from the beginning. And so that's something you want to be aware of too, because there's a shift and there's a change, and we're moving as a culture back to what is in line with the Constitution of the United States for America. We're moving back to the Republic. We're moving back to being treated, not dead at sea, alive. All right. And if you follow the congressional hearings and you follow the Supreme Court decisions, then you would understand what I say. It's not a feeling. I think that maybe if someday, no, the whether you agree or not is not the point. But with the decision, the overturn of Roe v. Wade, which does not affect the availability of the procedure at hand. I don't want to say it, and I don't want to get banned or anything, but the situation, if someone was taken advantage of, it doesn't change anything. That was always available to people through, and it would be funded with public funds. Okay, so that is the question. With that, the case was overturned, whereas there are people who are coming together to say, hey, in our particular state, we don't want to fund this, elective procedure. So that was a change with Roe v. Wade and how it affects the community. All right. People get emotional and make something of it other than what it is. And why do I say such a thing? Right? Because I actually went to read. I went to read to see what did Roe v. Wade do as far as the people being able to exercise whatever right that they have, right? So, and then what's important for me is that everything be done in truth. So in law, when does life start? These are the type of questions that you don't hear being talked about, but it is essential to any argument. In law, when is life considered to begin? Now, another decision that has come up that kind of makes it of a timely nature for me to talk about this is the overturn of this Chevron deference, the overturn of the Chevron deference, where people could come together as public officials using the Administrative Act, and they could make decisions that were repugnant to the Constitution. Well, that was overturned. So now, whatever decisions are to be made are supposed to be in line with the Constitution for the United States, for America. And I know that, and people like me, we have constitutional protections on the federal level when we choose them. Our God-given rights are protected on the federal level when we choose them. So some of the things that are happening on the community, on the state level, the county level, if we're not able to exercise our rights as we stand up and learn who we are and how things are supposed to be, then we will be creating systems where everyone knows to move it to the federal level. And in turn, if we're having trouble understanding this, then we will seek international protection. Right? But in the meantime, we can talk about some things that will help make our communities operate in a more lawful, organized manner, right? In honor. And I know that professionals are not taught, for various reasons, the truth on how to handle crisis situations with nationals, with citizens, stateless persons, with people in the community. Because at the end of the day, it's about the people. All right? We want everyone to be safe. For the record, I'm a naturalist. I'm not in line with any transhumanist agenda. All right? And the reason I think it's important to mention that is because it must be known, if you go to targetedjustice.org, you'll see that there is currently in place a system that does affect people's mental health. Part of the reason I'm saying that is my responsibility. I do recognize the Terrasol decision, which is my duty to warn, and knowing that people can be held liable on a legal level and on a spiritual level when we're not being honest and doing all we can to protect others and to speak out against evil and harm that is being done to others. So it is not documented as of yet publicly or widespread. It is documented, but not widespread, about the enrollment of certain persons, people, right, in these non-consensual testing programs where they will be experiencing symptoms that would appear to the uneducated to be a psychosis, when really it is a symptom of a direct energy weapon. There is something called voice to skull technology, where people are sent voices, and those voices could even sound like their voice. And so I think it is the case sometimes when people, particularly, I've seen this before, I didn't know what it was at the time, but looking back on it, I'm convinced now that this young man was a victim of a voice to skull research project. Why? Because, well, I'm not going to talk about all his physical presentation. He was very calm and very logical. That's not how you decide if someone has a mental illness or not, or if they're experiencing symptoms or not. And that's why it's important to know that whoever you're talking to as regarding like a patient or someone you're helping, they are always the expert on their situation. There are more people who actually are receiving voice to skull transmissions than what practitioners are trained to know. I never knew that when I received training, and I received training from the best, I was never told about voice to skull. I did learn that it is a thing, and this is it's well known in other sciences. So like speech communication technology, like they know that it exists, right? But the healthcare practitioners don't know. So if someone says they're hearing voices, of course, you're like, oh, I mean, you put that as a symptom. Now, hearing voices, actually, it's not just one diagnosis that could go under. All right. So we just want to be clear, even with the diagnosis. For me as a practitioner, when I was, in practice in that way, it's important to know that, especially if you're helping someone long term, right? The diagnoses are very important as it relates to helping a psychiatrist determine what medication is given to someone, and also when it comes to insurance. Okay. And if we, depending on the setting we're in, and we're trying to come up with an understanding, a knowing about whatever mental health presentations that someone is going through, it's less important, the diagnosis. Okay, because there's so many chemicals in the brain. There's so many ways that we present, right? Our mental health isn't just the functioning of our brain only. Our brain is connected to the rest of our body, and we are in an environment. All right, so person and environment. And there are many different complex things to consider when it comes to mental health. I probably will demystify that a little bit more later. I'm kind of starting in the middle, but for some reason I was impressed to share this. This is called, what I want to talk to you tonight about is a form. It's called the FD-12. And this form, this legal document, is used to involuntarily commit someone who is said by a public official to need commitment. And I'll share it. I'll say it just like that, because that's what it is. I'll go over the form with you, the last one that I could find. And I think there was a form that was updated in 2023, but it had a little bit of a blurb on it, so I couldn't see it all the way. I'll show it to you anyhow. And what I hope to do with my background being trauma-informed care, right? I hope to educate our public servants. I hope to save you from traumatizing someone with the unnecessary hospitalization. Not only are unnecessary hospitalizations expensive, but they're really damaging as far as to the level of functioning. If you hospitalize someone who doesn't need to be there, it's very, very, very traumatic. And having worked on an inpatient twice, one time, it was, the services were like way better for professionals. A lot of care was given. Okay. And one time it was in a public insured environment. And what I saw really is going to be something that I have to speak on, because I'm going to, educate and have enough of us know how to make a shift to transform our systems. Okay. That grant was for 10 states, I think maybe 5 states, whatever it was. Everyone who is a public servant and helping people who are experiencing any kind of behaviors that you don't understand, you have to be trained. Okay. Because it's better to not hurt someone. It's better to be careful than to be sorry. Better be careful than be sorry. Okay, right here. I'll just read it for what it is, and then I'll explain it a little bit more and the changes that I need people to know about, and even some recommendations that DC public servants can change. This is my gift. One of the many gifts I hope to give to you all. Okay, so the Department of Behavioral Health Training Institute offers Officer Agent Certification Training for the District of Columbia. This is a good thing, all right? The training is for people who want to apply for involuntary emergency admission for a person. Now, you know what? Someone might not think a lot of it, but people and person is not the same. And this is the District of Columbia. And many of you all know that they do not vote, right? They live in wards. The people live in wards, and they have the rights of persons, which is different than the rights of people. So that does stand out for me, okay? Natural persons, individuals. Some people would say that a natural person is a people, but it actually isn't. Okay. But things are changing. All right. In the meantime, I will say a good thing about the District of Columbia. I feel like that they're very careful about removing the rights from someone in many of the settings. Okay. It's not like, oh, you're a person, I can just treat you however I want. Now, maybe a neighboring state, they behave like that. The professionals behave like that, but not so much in the District of Columbia. All right. All right. So to be eligible for the certification, a person must be qualified practitioner employed by a mental health provider approved by Department of Behavioral Health, DBH. The DBH Training Institute is located at 64 New York Avenue at the intersection of Florida Avenue, New York Avenue, and First Streets Northeast. The Institute offers continuing education units, accredited e-learning courses, including disorders, engagement, and referral, and motivational interviewing. And I'm sure they offer way more than that, okay? FD12 application is used to request emergency hospitalization by a physician or psychologist. Let me just stop here. Having worked in this field for a minute, in the District of Columbia, don't know of any psychologist in the community like that. Okay, so we'll talk about this another time, but a physician is different than, and a physician could have many specialties, right? But even a psychiatrist, right? A psychiatrist is a type of physician. So a psychiatrist is going to have a different training, certification, licensing than a psychologist. Usually psychologists, they'll do testing. They use testing modules. They're not really in community health in many places. And I've been to many, professional conferences, and the psychologist is usually not there. It's going to be your psychiatrist. It's going to be your social worker, your licensed practical counselor, LCPC. And yes, psychologists are PhD level practitioners, usually, unless it's a school psychologist that does not necessarily have to have a PhD. So that means someone who's done a dissertation, but they're very well trained with testing, evidence-based testing. So they might do an observation and track how many times you see a certain behavior from a child. They might interview, if it's for a child, they'll interview the parents, find out about the presentation, and they'll talk with the teachers. They have more book testing, standardized tests. That's different from how, let's say, a social worker would help someone. Social worker, they're going to use different measures of testing. They're going to use more observation. They're going to do their own evaluations. They're going to do their own logic models. They're going to use other models of care. They're going to apply someone's theories to the situation, to how someone is presenting. And they're going to look at the whole environment, and they're going to notice the settings in which the frequency, intensity, and duration of behaviors occur. All right. It's a different way of evaluating. It's a different value system. Okay. Self-determination is a big part of it, and helping people be their best. All right. And not as stringent, I feel, as to high level of responsibility. And yes, but not as stringent as to, if I see the husband, then I can't see the wife unless the husband says that. No. Like, if they need couples counseling, they need couples counseling, and they don't have to go to two different counselors. That's what many social workers would say. You might have a psychologist that maybe that's against their ethics for whatever reason. I don't know. See, so that's because it's against the ethics or training in one profession. It doesn't mean it's the case in another profession, because for a social worker, it's about level of functioning. All right. Let's see. So the FD-12 application is used to request emergency hospitalization by a physician or a psychologist. And I did read a little further, and I know it to be the case that there are police officers, there are other first responders who can apply for the involuntary commitment. And this is so important because I know that there are details to this that can save somebody from a lawsuit, and it can save somebody from traumatizing someone who doesn't need to go on the psych ward or the behavior health unit, whatever one you want to call it. It is proper to call it the behavior health unit. All right. But I think that if anyone thinks it's a little thing or a light thing, they can just go stay there for 3 days when they don't need to be there. Go stay there for 3 days because someone doesn't know what to do and they want to avoid any possible liability because they don't know how to do a proper assessment. Great care should go in, even if someone says that they're suicidal, great care should go into creating a safety plan. So if you saw some ad on TV and said, if you're feeling depressed and you need medication, go to your nearest wherever. Someone tells you to go to emergency room and you tell them, I had this traumatic experience years ago. I was on medication. I'm considering getting on medication again. I don't really know. Can you help me? And they're like, well, we have to put you on the behavioral health unit for 3 days. This has happened. This is unethical, and you have a lawsuit if you don't have a history of being hospitalized or have plan or ideation. You're put on a behavioral health unit because somebody didn't know what else to do. You have a lawsuit. All right. Now, you might not be able to find just a regular attorney to do it. You might have to learn an administrative process. But I'm telling you that goes against your constitutional rights and trauma-informed care. And there is no statute of limitations on fraud. And part of what is to happen is if someone says that they're thinking to hurt themselves or others, this is really important to hear me on this. That is a really big indicator of whether someone should be hospitalized or not. Do they express that they are interested in hurting themselves or someone else? And do they have a plan? And do they have the capacity to carry out the plan? All three. All three. Now, many times you will find that all three aren't there. If all three aren't there, you have a lawsuit. I hope you hear me, yay. I hope you hear me, Kanye. if you didn't have a plan to hurt somebody, or if the people who are supposed to be around you helping you didn't exercise their responsibility to keep things away from you that might cause you to hurt somebody, somebody got a lawsuit. Okay? Lawsuit. As in lawsuit, and hopefully you won't have a license again, because that was egregious right there. And maybe the lack of complaint might make it so that the person's not, that physician's not penalized, because the physician should be able to say, hey, I wasn't able to lock up the knives or lock up any of the things that they would use to hurt themselves or someone else. Like I honestly tried. I couldn't do that. And since I couldn't do that, I had no choice but to call for emergency care. That's what happened. That's what's supposed to happen. Okay, and anything outside of that is negligent. It's maltreatment. And this is what genocide looks like on my people right here, right now. Okay, so what I'm doing is my part to educate folks about what a proper evaluation is and the harm that is done when you hospitalize people unnecessarily and without doing your proper due diligence as a professional, which you're supposed to do. You're licensed to do this. If you don't, I can't imagine someone actually getting a license and not know how to do a proper evaluation and not know what a safety plan is. And if you haven't attempted to do a safety plan with someone, and some people can reach out to me privately. If you are a healthcare professional and you don't know how to do a safety plan, or if you don't know how to do a safety plan and your hiring agency doesn't teach you how to do safety plans, advocate for a class where you learn how to do safety plans. Because honestly, I've never lost anyone, okay, I've done many safety plans. I used to work with children in crisis, mental health crisis situations. So if I just was like, oh, they said this and that, so now we got to take them to the thing, that's negligence. You have to expose someone who's experiencing a trauma. If they are not psychotic at the time, right? Then you have to try the safety plan with them. Okay. And even if they are psychotic, depending on having psychotic behavior, right? Depending on the situation, you can protect them by making sure that they don't have anything around them that they would need to hurt you with or hurt someone else with, or themselves. Okay. And then there are times when too, there are people who are nice and calm and they're self-cutters, self-mutilators or whatever. I don't think that it is someone's right to just cut themselves because that's what they're used to doing. This is some kind of idea that came up about they have the right to self-mutilate. Okay, if that's what you want to do, you want to self-mutilate, don't let somebody who cares about you know about it. Don't do it. And that's the indicator that you need help. If you want to hurt yourself or hurt someone else, that's the indicator you need help and you need to be hospitalized until you get the right care and what have you to be able to make better decisions. And this will spill over into other situations, because you will notice that people who look just fine, who've expressed a will to hurt others and they have the capacity to hurt others, are walking around as if there's nothing wrong with them, and there is. All right. It might be sociopathic because it's their pattern over time and part of their personality, but that doesn't make it any less healthy for the world. Okay, so back to this. The application must state clearly that the circumstances and reasons for taking a person into custody. All right, before making a decision to admit a person, alternatives to hospitalization must be considered. How many times do you do that? How many times do you consider the alternatives? Now, mind you, a better way to say this would be, before making a decision to make an application, then alternatives to involuntary mental health evaluation must be considered. Why do you say that? Because this isn't just for hospitalization. This is for involuntary mental health care. So let me just say this. If someone is high, if someone is under the influence of some type of substance, you cannot evaluate for mental health. No, you evaluate for mental health when it is ruled out that someone is under the influence of a substance, and it's ruled out that they are experiencing some type of physical health problem that might mask itself as a mental health illness or dysfunction. So, for instance, if someone has meningitis, if someone has meningitis and they act out of the norm, right? They're going to display in a way that possibly someone untrained might think that they're having some type of psychotic episode. It wouldn't be called psychotic. Yes, maybe they're having a delusion at the time, tactile, where something doesn't feel right. They think something's going on around them that isn't, or any number of problems, but any number of thoughts that are incorrect. But if they don't have a history of mental health treatment, you might say hospitalize them and let the emergency room go look. I have even known it that someone was experiencing a stroke, right? Experiencing a stroke. Their loved one said this is, think they're having a stroke because one of the symptoms is rapid personality change, right? And then they're trying to put the person, treat them like a person, not a people, and put them on the behavioral health unit. Knowing what I know now, I'm thinking they're trying to get the numbers right for one of their research programs, as there's a big research initiative. And they're also, those technologies are known to shrink the brain, the ones that are being used. So these are things that we're coming out of. All right. With that said, you have to stay close to people who are going into the healthcare, sick care system, particularly when they're in crisis, and to protect those who cannot speak for themselves. Another reason why I'm here sharing this information, so that people would not just look at things for face value, and they'll actually use their critical thinking skills, and they will gain knowledge about what is happening so that they can not be used to bring harm to people. Do no harm is the foundation of all this. All right. I know of a case where someone was experiencing some other hormonal imbalance. They started hearing things, hearing noises, and that's what they said at the emergency room. And then they put someone who has zero history of mental health treatment on some type of medication. I don't know what. And now they're like despondent and some more stuff. And, some people get in a way. There's some excellent psychiatrists who care, they listen, but a lot of them, once they receive a referral for a 3-day evaluation, a lot of them, they will not over medicate you or anything like that, but they're still not going to let you go home. And then what you see and what you experience, if you weren't having problems, you might need some counseling from what you did see. It's called vicarious trauma. And I mean, the trauma of being locked up in one place for 3 days. And if you happen to have a psychiatrist who doesn't care about you, and they just like you here now and nasty and some more stuff, lawsuit. Anyway, Not that it takes away your pain. I'm sorry that these things happen, but I know that they do. And so it is important that administrators implement a trauma-informed care mindset and then prepare themselves for liability when people understand and wake up to these non-consensual research programs and this knowledge and understanding that these are unconstitutional. And for multiple reasons, we're moving back into accepting our birthright to be happy and to be left alone and to be private. Okay. And to be protected from those who want to profit off of us being sick. All right, let me see. Next, what do I want to share with you? I can hardly see. This happened yesterday, didn't it? Okay, so let me just show you here. This is the most recent form, but this one right here, it's skewed. So right here, you can't see what's under it. So I'm gonna go back to an old form. But okay, so it's December 2023. Maybe I can find it eventually. Okay, the purpose of this executive order, all right. Chief of Police Assistant Pamela A. Smith. Executive order is to announce the updated form and procedures for the FD12 by a physician, officer, or agent of the District of Columbia, Behavior Health of, or an officer authorized to make arrests. Okay. So this is why you really, as public servants, you want to have a full understanding, maybe beyond what you're trained, right? To really understand mental health. And so if you have to ask somebody something like, do you have mental health problems? Have you taken your medicine or something? If you're saying these ridiculous things, you're not trained well. You know, you should be able to come to your own evaluation and ask someone what they're experiencing and even if they're experiencing something that makes no sense to you, that doesn't mean that they need to be involuntarily hospitalized. That's ridiculous. All right. If they're not at immediate risk or potential of hurting themselves or someone else, they don't need to be hospitalized for mental health. Now, they might have something else going on, right, that they would want to be evaluated for. I'm not trying to say that they don't need help, but, because they're a little loud for you or make no sense to you, that doesn't necessarily mean that they should be FD12'd. And so we want to protect people from involuntary research and that sort of thing. And then there is plenty of money to be made out here because there's going to be a shift in helping people move things the other way toward healing and toward fixing this system. All right. So let's see. The person to be taken into custody is currently in hospital or at CPEP. So it happens where someone is in the custody, right? And even if you are in custody, there are times you have to go back through CPEP. I think this is to cut down on the fraud because it's a great amount of fraud in mental health services, right? It's very sad. If a person is to be taken into custody, it is currently in a hospital or at CPEP, which is comprehensive. I can't remember exactly, but it's in the community. All right. If they're there as a voluntary patient, it should be left blank. The box is for hospitals, CPEP is not for use by MPD. So I know it could be the case if someone is, some people's egos get involved too. You'd be surprised, right? It is the case where someone, let's say they're in a hospital setting and they're trying to exercise their right according to the law to be released. And if people don't understand the law, and the person is insisting on going home, it might be the case that a doctor would actually have to call to get someone else to extend their stay. All right. Some people make decisions not as much around your mental health as around the bed count. Not good, not good, not good. But we're getting these things straight, okay? Because truth lasts. All right, so here's the form, and this is a good thing. Superior Court of the District of Columbia, right? So someone is a ward, and they're going to have some protections for someone looking out for them. It's not often, I've seen it happen, but it's not often that someone would go on the behavioral health unit and then just be forgotten about. And if it did happen, it wasn't because an attorney didn't do what they were supposed to do. Maybe it's because someone who's taking responsibility for that man or woman, they might be high functioning, know what they're doing, but they don't know all the inner workings when it comes to healthcare and these type of things. And sometimes, depending on the setting, you might have like power struggles. I know of a situation that power struggles, first of all, they don't want to take the trauma-informed care training that's there. There are plenty of people like me who have training in what called resource development and systems. And sometimes you have folks who are in control that have been doing things a certain way for 30 years plus, and they don't see the problem with not following a system that is consistent with what we know about mental health today. All right. So, okay, you have the application for emergency observation and diagnosis by a physician or a psychologist of the person. They just need to change that field. Like the application of emergency observation, diagnosis, it should be by a certified mental health practitioner. Just say that. Because the way it says now, maybe it is a truth, but it just is more accurate to say by a certified. And if they're not, I don't know what's going on, but I think that they do have certification. I'm pretty sure that they do. Okay. An officer or agent of the Department of Behavioral Health. I think I read this before in a different form. Okay. So this form, you can't see exactly everything that's happening in this part of the form down here. But here's the thing. Here's what it needs to look like. It needs to say that what behaviors the person is displaying. It needs to say whatever that behavior is, it must be that they're at imminent risk of hurting themselves or someone else, right? So if they're in the hospital and they've already been worked up for everything, and they've already decided there's no physical health conditions, and if that is its place, then it's not going to have anything to do with a police officer. It's going to be the healthcare providers that are going to send them, I guess, to the behavioral health unit, in this case through CPAP. Now, I'm telling you, you want to, as a as a mental health professional, as a doctor, physician, whatever have you. And in this case, I would definitely say a doctor. Maybe you're being docked. I know of cases, not firsthand that I know of these, but I know of one I've seen firsthand. But I know of situations where the physician didn't like the patient, and so they put the patient on the psych ward, on the behavioral health unit. They'd never been there in their life. Lawsuit. And someone who's doing these things, especially you doing it to people who look like me, boom, these things are going to come to an end. That's not acceptable. That's not acceptable. And usually people who do this, they're not from here, right? So go back to your own home country, and then you do that to the mothers at your land. Don't come over here and do that. These things are not going to stand. All right. So, and the same thing too, if you're a medical doctor and you don't know how to vet for whether someone needs to be on the behavioral health unit or not, you need to get some more training or do whatever. Because even if you're not sure, if you ask the right questions, you should become sure. You should vet whether or not, listen, if you don't want to do it, no problem. That's why it should be a social worker running the team meetings and running the multidisciplinary team, not the physician. That is not in compliance with the federal law. It's not in compliance with the efficient way to do things. Because now, if it happens different and the psychiatrist is running the team, that's a red flag. That's a red flag. What are you doing in your facility while the physician needs to run the team? That's in community health, and it's on inpatient. No, I do know of situations where the psychiatrist does that. This is notice. Work on that. Work on that. That's not ethical. It's against trauma-informed care, and it leaves the door wide open to exploit people who are coming in a vulnerable time. All right. So let's see. I think actually, let me show you this one other form, and then I'll let you go. And I will have shared what's on my heart, and I'm gonna go back to doing my work, and I'll have even more things to share with you. I cannot wait. So, not this. It's it. Boom. Okay, so yeah. This right here, this is an older form. I'm sure it's not the most recent, right? Because we saw the one from 2023. This is like 10 years ago. So May 9. All right. So, but the point of this form is very similar. He was a great man. Stephen Barron, I think, or Barone. I think he was a social worker too. Why do social workers do that? I know why. Because people don't respect us. When we move into positions that don't necessarily require us to have a license, why do we take off that we have an MSW, right? And then what happens is people don't have a full perspective of what it is we really do and how we're trained, and how a good social worker is going to really understand the laws and the reasoning, the resource development, and that sort of thing. So some social workers deal more with direct service, and that's fine and good. We need that. But then others deal with macro and more systems development and management. Okay. So he was really good with implementing this sort of community treatment teams where you have intensive support in the community, which reduces hospitalization and which helps people be in the least restrictive environment. And I'm sure you heard that term, least restrictive environment, as it relates to Wendy Williams. And I think if you go back to some of my other posts, I talked about that situation with her. And the attorney tried to explain what least restrictive environment was, and she had it all wrong. Okay. And what they presented regarding Wendy being detained was definitely part of a genocide operation and against her rights to family and against her son's rights to his mother as family, as she only has one son, right? And now he didn't have any access to her wealth, and her assets are being sold off for aphasia, which is a communication disorder. For aphasia, no, no, it's for the funds. And so this is just one example of that I think everybody could relate to be like, something is wrong here. Is it me or is something wrong? Yes, something is wrong. And that gentleman doesn't know his rights or how to stand up for his rights. All right. And I kind of reject the idea that you don't have a right to be treated a certain way if you don't know how to defend it legally, because so many of us have been miseducated along the way that it's a big gap between having the right and actually knowing how to defend it. And that gap in between is where people oppress and take advantage of and abuse others. And to say that they don't really have it because they don't know how to defend it, I feel like even though it might be a maximum law, that's not a maximum natural law. Okay, definitely it's not a maximum of a natural law. Maybe of legal standards and practices, yes. So anyway, this form right here, the policy was revised to convert the former DBH policy into a Department of Behavior Health policy. No substantive changes were made to the policy. That was back in 2014. This applies to the Behavioral Health Authority, the programs and mental health providers that employ or will employ DBH officer agents and individuals who seek DBH officer agent certification. I'm going to skip a little bit. Now, let me just talk about this. Policy dissemination and filing instructions. Just for the record, it takes about 10 years. Back in the day anyway. I think time is such with technology and everything, things are going to move a little bit faster, but only if people speak up and share. But policy dissemination took about 10 years before. But anyway, not necessarily within the system, but for what is known in research to then get disseminated, it would take 10 years. Now, in the spirit, how things are speeding up, if you ask for wisdom to know something, you're going to know it. It's not going to take you 10 years. But this is just as far as research goes, right? And system change. All right. So all right. So basically, this is just saying the DBH policy and procedures manual, and contractors must ensure that the policy is maintained in accordance with their internal procedures. And so this is another thing I'm hoping to achieve tonight, is really just this knowing that it's each one of us in our various roles that bring this whole system alive. And like, if you're told something that is against your conscience or what have you, study, research, learn your rights, learn your protections so you can stand up for what is right, because it is the one who is, doesn't care, apathetic or whatever, that injustices are allowed to exist. And it happens. It can happen where it then becomes the culture of the agency to do something incorrectly. And then so you might have 100 people doing something incorrectly. That doesn't nullify the truth. It just makes 100 of you doing it incorrectly, and then more of us waking up to what is correct and on how to enforce what is right. Because when we don't do right, we waste money, we hurt people, and that's not okay. All right. So, let me see here. Down here, number 4, it talks about certification, successful completion of the DBH officer agent certification, and determination that a person has met the requisite qualifications established by the DBH officer agent certification committee. Okay. So this has to do more so with the agent who's going to be implementing this. So the application form used for emergency admission for observation and diagnosis. All right. That's what it's for. It's observation and diagnosis. So I really want officers to know, when I say officers, like policy enforcers, officers, to know that if you think someone is high, if you think someone is possibly experiencing something else other than just straight mental health, like if their loved one is telling you, I'm thinking they're having a stroke, or if the loved one is saying, oh yeah, they have dementia or something like that, Alzheimer's, the behavioral health unit is not necessarily the place for them. Although dementia, Alzheimer's, these cognitive dysfunctions do affect the behavior, but the behavioral health units are designed for severe mental illness symptoms, right? They're not, and many times it's psychiatrists that work there, depending on how much quality and care that they bring with themselves, right? Some of them are not trained to look for something other than the mental health. So the first thing will be mental health, and they'll be missing treating something else like an infection or some other hormonal imbalance, right? So you just want to take that opportunity to be careful and allow a mental health professional or a physician or whatever have you to call CPEP, right? If they're high. If they're high, they don't, but they might take them at the behavioral health unit, but that doesn't mean that that's where they belong. That's incorrect. That's a waste of money, and it traumatizes the people. And when I say money, I mean moon energy, right? Because we all contribute to the system, and we're responsible for the debt or not claiming the debt, all right? And so we want to do our part as public servants to conserve the resources, right? And then emergency room doctors want to do their part as far as being educated and leave their ego at home. If you're not coming here to serve the people and help the people, like I say, go back to wherever you came from, because it's not acceptable to genocide and exploit my people the way we have been genocided and exploited. And part of the targeting that goes on is that when people share what they're going through, some of the symptoms, some of the things that happen to them, they're made to be thought to be, have mental health problems. But if you add up, when was the onset of this? Yes, there are programs since the 50s that are designed to create drama in our communities. There is a secret treaty of Verona. There are these things, right? So it's important to be aware of that. All right. Boop, boop, boop. So when it comes to a mental health provider and their definition back on this form 10 years ago, they put an agency as a provider as well. But if someone is signing this form, you're not signing just for your agency. You're signing on your license and your honor. All right. and the agency is not going to save you. So you really want to know what you're doing, and you really want to be careful not to hospitalize someone who doesn't need it just because you're not sure. If you're not sure, then you should be getting yourself out of the bed, going and speaking to the person and trying to safety plan. And yes, I have seen of lawsuits where community health providers did not have a clinician available to help with the assessment, and then the police officers didn't know how to handle it, and so they were violent, and the man lost his life. And so it was said, well, hey, you're receiving monies to help this person in the community, but you weren't there. All right. And that is valid, because a police officer is not going to necessarily know how to handle everything that comes their way. They don't have the same training and knowing how to calm people down. And generally, some do. Some are good. Some are good with people. Some are able to do that. But generally speaking, they're going to just defer to FD12. Like I said, generally speaking, not everyone. So. And then some counties and districts are better than others with training folks. Also, a qualified practitioner, again, psychiatrists, yes. A psychologist, okay, they're qualified, fine. You just don't necessarily see that in the community that often. A licensed independent clinical social worker and advanced practice registered nurse, advanced practice. Probably want to put the type of license that registered nurse has, because there are nurses who are trained in that. So just to make the language more streamlined and more evidence-based from county to county, from state to state, I think is an important thing, right? Because we do live in a global society. And so we want to recognize the interagency relationships that we have with each other, and have an accurate measuring stick, and have the same accurate language. It, like I said, it is what it is, not what we feel it is. And so we need to move back more into evidence-based practices. And then that means our language is going to be just that. What it means is what it means, right? So the other type of qualified practitioner would be a licensed professional counselor, a licensed independent social worker, and an addiction counselor. Now, I actually would like to find a way to go to one of the trainings for a qualified practitioner. All right. Just so I can know and understand what the training is, because I do have a commitment, like I said, to trauma-informed care. And that is a thing, to make sure that you don't hospitalize people unnecessarily. It's not better safe than sorry when it comes to someone's life, because putting someone on the behavioral health unit and they don't belong there is not at all, it's not at all safe. Statistically, it's not a good thing. Very traumatizing. And people come out with worse behaviors than what they went in with after the case. All right. So this is not a good thing right here. This is when there's a reason to believe that a person is mentally ill, and because of such illness is likely to injure self or others if not immediately detained. Okay. So this means a person may be taken into custody without a warrant and transported, presented for involuntary emergency admission to a public or private hospital at the DBH Comprehensive Psychiatric Emergency Program. Okay, so here's the thing. A better way to say it, a more accurate way to say it, is that there's reason to believe that a person is an imminent risk of hurting themselves or others. And because of such imminent risk of hurting themselves or others, is likely to do just that if not immediately detained. And they may be taken into custody without a warrant, transported, preserved, involuntary emergency admission to a public or private. See, there's a big difference between someone that's having mental illness, because you could have mental illness and be talking crazy, but you have no way to do what you say you're going to do, or the people around are able to handle you and they feel comfortable, they have a safety plan. So that means that it's not appropriate to take someone if there is a reasonable safety plan. And if by chance something were to happen, you have insurance to cover you because it's the case that you did a safety plan. That's what a safety plan. If at the end of the safety planning, you don't feel comfortable that it is able to be put into place, then you would not sign a safety plan, and then you would have to hospitalize. But I find too many people don't even know how to safety plan, and then they end up sending people for a evaluation for nothing, and then it's a lot of money wasted, and you just traumatize someone. Not okay. All right. I think I'm going to let it be. I think we have the gist. Yeah, and I'm getting sleepy. Now, a DBH officer agent certification training, it's only, back then it was only offered twice a year. Okay. But okay, let me just say this while we're here. Let's read this part. Looks like it might be interesting. So, reviewing the clinical and legal definition of mental illness, injure, and likelihood of injury. Yeah, those are important terms. Very much so. And it would be better to say those who, suffer from severe mental illness, right? All right. So, because, you have everything is on the spectrum. So you can have somebody with an adjustment disorder. It's just a whole bunch of things to consider. All right. Now, determining when a mental illness is likely to cause a person to injure self or others. The illness doesn't cause you to hurt someone or others. It's your behaviors that might cause you to hurt someone else or others. And if someone doesn't have control over their behaviors, then that would cause them to harm self or others. All right. So assessing the risk of harm and level of functioning. So that, again, assessing the risk of harm, if you are able to assess and do an intervention, that's what is ethical and appropriate. As you're assessing, you're also saying, okay, if you assess to see, do you have any knives in the house? Oh, yeah, we got a bunch of knives and we keep them right there in the drawer. Okay, is it feasible for you to put them somewhere else where the person who's having the symptoms is not able to reach them? Like, do you have your alcohol closed up? Do you have your weapons or your firearms secured? These type of things, right? So that's part of assessing the risk. And it is okay to assess and correct at the same time. It really is your responsibility to do that if you are a professional. But if you're saying they have firearms and they're not likely to, you can't, not supposed to have firearms in a home anyway in the District of Columbia, but just in general, right? If you don't feel comfortable with your safety plan, then you can't sign it. But to not do it, that's not okay. All right. So defining cultural competence. Yes, this is important because in some of our communities, like, people talk loud, people talk crazy, people say things that are not literal. And so if you automatically don't understand what they're saying, and so then you think, oh, they need to be hospitalized, that's not a good thing. All right. So I hope that some of what I said helps someone have a little bit different perspective about the FD12, the emergency involuntary what is it? Involuntary detainment, pretty much. So yeah, we want to be safe. We want to be careful so that we're not sorry. All right. So thanks for listening to me. All right. I I had fun. I hope that you found something in it. And know too, with mental health services, a lot for someone who's on medication, I would not suggest that you come off your medication or whatever. That's between you and your doctor. And I mean that 100% because when you're going on and coming off, these are dangerous times. Kind of like when an abused woman is trying to get free. That's like the most dangerous time for her. Like more dangerous than if she was just staying, right? So that's the same thing when it comes to mental health services, and if someone decides to medicate going on or coming off, you want everything to be right. So just know that you can defer to medical doctors when it's appropriate. If you think the person is high or whatever like that, like I said, the behavioral health unit, from an insurance perspective as well, that's not the place for them. So there might be like cities where they do that or whatever, put them on the behavioral health unit, but they're really high. But that's actually in violation of insurance codes and policies because they don't work like that. Because you have to detox and be off the meds before you can evaluate for mental health. That just is what it is. All right. Again, thank you. Good night. Peace, love, joy, fullness. All right. Love.